Oh, we will go ahead and get started. Traditional couple of minutes, we're ready to go. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Eco Questions this afternoon. This is being recorded, so please remain muted until it's time for our question and answer session. During the presentation, feel free to type questions into the chat. We'll answer those first. Everyone who's registered for this session will receive the recording in their email, and it's also going to be available on our YouTube channel. For those of you not familiar with Metro Phoenix EcoFlora, we're a community science project that uses iNaturalist to document urban biodiversity. And we support the naturalist community through events like this one, resources, and more. Each month we have a new EcoQuest where we look for specific species or biological relationships like pollinators, things like that. Last April, some of you may remember we did an EcoQuest looking for cactus, and that was sort of a base for this month's EcoQuest, the Saguaro Census, which is actually its own project itself, not just an EcoQuest. So today we have Dr. Tania Hernandez with us, who is the new World Succulents Research Scientist from the Desert Botanical Garden and the leader of the overall Saguaro project. Tania is going to tell us about that project and the Saguaro Census. We've been collaborating on this for some time now, and we're really excited to share it with you all. Tania, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for your time, for coming here to listen about this project. We are very excited with the Saguaro Census. It's been very popular. Probably you've heard about it. We have people from the news coming to interview Jenny and I. So we are receiving attention that I was not expecting. But that, I think, reflects the importance of the project and the interest that people have on these plants, on saguaros. So this is part of, as Jenny said, this is part of a larger project, but with partnership with the EcoFlora, specifically for the Saguaro Census. And during this talk, I'm going to try to explain the project so you, perhaps I can make clearer the importance of the census in the context of the project. If you have any question, feel free to ask. Are you watching my presentation now?
Yep, we can see you.
All right. So if you remember summer 2020, we had these record temperatures where the valley reached the highest temperatures, the highest historical temperatures. And many things happened, but amongst them, people started noticing that saguaros were dying and they were falling. It was also, it was also in the news that people noticed that we were losing saguaros. And here at the garden, we received many questions. People from the community, from the media, were reaching out to us asking questions about this. Of course, everybody thought this was related to, well, first thing, we were not sure if this was truly a problem or not. We didn't know if this was just a regular loss of saguaros because they are getting old, or if it was actually that they were really getting drier and dying because of the heat. We were not sure. We were not sure if the rate of loss of saguaros was higher than any other time. We tend to lose many saguaros in monsoon when the winds hit stronger, and we tend to lose many naturally. That occurs naturally in the wild. But in this time, we strongly suspect about climate change. We think that this might be related to climate change and the high temperatures that we can reach in cities. But as a scientist, we need to be certain. We need to get data and proof that there's a relationship. And then if there's a problem, the problem is true, we need to find a solution. So in response to this community concern, we started thinking about the Saguaro Census, the Saguaro project. Is it true that saguaros are suffering due to climate change? Might we lose them in the cities? Is Phoenix gonna be so hot that we cannot grow even saguaros? So we decided to study this more deeply. First, we need to better understand saguaro as a species. And then we want to compare saguaros growing in the city with saguaros growing in the wild. That's the strategy we're going to follow. So this is the natural range of saguaro. Saguaro is highly coincident with what we delimit as the Sonoran Desert. However, some people consider Baja California as part of the Sonoran Desert, but saguaros don't live there. So here the authors paint these little saguaritos here to show the range. But if you travel along Sonora and southern Arizona, you're going to see that the distribution is patchy. Some of these areas that they show saguaros, they don't have saguaros, and we don't clearly understand why yet. So important part of the project is to understand this. This is a natural climatic gradient. We have saguaros growing under more humid conditions than others. I'm going to show you pictures in a bit. And if you drive along this range of saguaro, you drive looking at them, you're going to see that in some places saguaros look much healthier than others. So one part of the project is to understand why is that happening. For example, this is a little town called Magdalena. It is like, I don't know, half hour from the border. This is Nogales, this is Tucson. And in Magdalena, saguaros grow in between the houses of poor people, and this population is so healthy. Saguaros look big and chubby, and they are so abundant. They all look healthy. It's really nice to go visit this place. We have other places in the US like this. For example, Black Canyon to the north of Phoenix is, you can see saguaros. They are very abundant, very healthy. This is another place, another locality called Cascabel. It is towards the east of the Catalina Mountains, and here you can see Mount Lemon. This is Tucson, and this saguaro, we call it population, or this locality where you can find saguaros. These are the largest saguaros I have seen. Look at the size of the stem of this saguaro. They are really massive. They are really huge. They branch a lot. So it is clear that they are super healthy there. However, there's other populations, other saguaro populations, other localities that saguaros are really struggling. We visited the westernmost population or extreme of the distribution. This is Yuma. Here you can see Yuma, and in the south we even went to Cibola. Already in the California side, you can find few saguaros there. We visited Cofa National Wildlife Refuge. Saguaros are healthier here in Cofa. In Cibola, they are really struggling. Saguaros are thin. They are very spread, not abundant at all. We couldn't see many babies or large plants. However, they survive there and they live there. So part of this project, we are collecting little pieces of stem tissue of these plants. We are taking measurements of different spots. We're visiting 30 spots to cover all the natural range of saguaros. And we want these pieces of tissue to get DNA. What we are going to do is something similar to the ancestry approach that you might be familiar with as in 23andMe. where you get DNA sequence data from all these individuals in the population, and you try to elucidate the ancestry, where do they come from, and several other information about the individuals and the populations. Of course, I warn here, this is a very different scale. We have the amount of data and knowledge we have about humans cannot be compared to what we have for Saguaro. Saguaro genome was just sequenced a couple of years ago with not a very good quality, but we are going to use it. Our collaborators in the University of Arizona are improving it. We have a decent quality genome, and with this approach, we hope that we're gonna better understand saguaros, what are the genetic variants that like to inhabit or are adapted to the different localities or environments. So this is the approach we are using, but importantly, we are doing this. We are genotyping or characterizing the genetic sequences of all saguaros in the natural range, because we want to know where our saguaros growing in the city, in urban spaces, where they come from. Where do they come from? Some of them are really old. Some of them we know, the owners report where did they buy, where did they bring it. But some, for many other plants, we had no idea. So we want to know what is the population, the natural population they belong. And let me see what I have here. And the reason is that we want to know who to compare. So we're going to find these plants in urban areas, urban spaces, and then we're going to find the wild relatives. And we're going to compare how are they doing, how are they growing, how well are they growing, how are plants in the city coping with the stress that plants in the wild do not, like heat and pollution. So that way we compare, imagine as if we're comparing twins. So the genetic background is covered. The differences are not due to genetics, are due to the different environmental conditions, right? Please let me know if you have any question. We can perform this type of study. It's called genome-wide association. And with these studies, we can try to detect which genes are adapted to which local conditions. Like in the range of saguaros, as I said, some of them are growing under very harsh conditions. Some of them are doing really good. So we're going to try to find at the genetic level, what are the genes that are more correlated with those conditions, with those types of health. We can do other type of studies at the molecular level to understand how are the plants coping with stress. And this is going to help us not only to understand how saguaros do, but how any plant can cope with heat. And this is very important because in the city, in Phoenix, we have a natural experiment that if we were to repeat this experiment under artificial condition, it would be extremely hard and extremely expensive. And that is trying to see how plants will do in a scenario with higher temperatures and more dryness. So those conditions that we expect to have in the future due to climate change, we have them already in the city. The cities are heat islands, a lot of heat stress for these plants. So we're going to study saguaros growing in the city to try to understand how plants in the wild will cope with extremely hot conditions that they're going to face in the future. So some of the things that the plants can do is they can turn on and turn off some genes. They can change the structure of the DNA to try to regulate better the growth rates. So we're gonna do also these studies, and we expect to better understand these, and also having finding the varieties, genetic varieties of saguaro that better cope with heat stress, we can propose to propagate and populate our urban areas with these, let's call them varieties of saguaros that will do better, will perform better under extreme heat. We have received, well, this is some pictures of how we collect the tissue material. We go to the wild and we get a piece of the stem, and it has to be immediately frozen. So we bring to the field these big tanks filled with liquid nitrogen. These pictures are taken in Mexico. This is field work that we did in Mexico. And then one important objective of the study is also that this is going to help us develop methods and protocols that we might be able to apply to other cacti species. Saguaro is not under particular threat. They are very abundant. However, in the cactus family, there's many other species that are really under very high threat. And these methods and these protocols that we develop for saguaro, they might help us to study these and species that are under greater danger. So this is important. And we also are going to try to develop an adoption program for these plants. So once finding people willing to participate in this kind of research project with the garden, we might then give them under adoption these endangered plants so they can help us keep them and preserve this genetic diversity. Well, we want to better understand the distribution, general health, and genetics of our urban saguaro population. So one of the things we are asking in the census is people to assess the general health of the plant, how they think the plant is doing. And of course, this is subjective, but this is going to give us an idea of how healthy our plants are. There's many concerns. I've heard people, I've received emails of people reporting that they, over the years, they have seen saguaros on their neighborhood die, and they are not being replaced by new saguaros, of course, because getting a saguaro is really expensive, right? Getting a saguaro in your yard is really expensive, but we are not getting new ones. One concern is that if our saguaros in the cities are dying, are we going to have new ones growing at a rate that we hope to for our children to see them in the cities? In this plant characterizes our urban spaces as well, and it's iconic for us. It gives us identity, but if we're losing it, we need to make efforts so future generations enjoy them. And if we want to do that, we need to start now. We need to start planting baby saguaros now in the city. So the Saguaro Census is going to help us to know how many we have, where they are, how healthy they are. With the size of the plant, we're going to try to assess how old they are. Of course, this is not going to be extremely accurate, but this is an approximation that we can have to have a better idea. And this is going to be like to take a general pictures, to have a general broad picture of what's going on with our saguaros in the city. We're going to generate a database with all the data you help us to get. And with this database, we're going to be able to monitor these plants over the future. And next year, next couple of years, we repeat the Saguaro Census. We can visit the same plants, look at the photographs by them, take new photographs and assess how is our saguaro population in urban areas doing. So it is very important. So this is the observations you can see in iNaturalist. So for those perhaps you don't know that we are doing this census through the iNaturalist app, where people can make observations of nature, of any kind of species you see either in nature or in urban spaces, and you can upload them. and share with everybody. So this is how the map looks for the Phoenix metropolitan area in this, I see kind of like orangey. And the green pins represents saguaro observations. And as you see, there's areas that we have huge gaps, and we don't understand if this is true gaps or we are really missing saguaros there, and why. So this is how the saguaro, this is how the iNaturalist app looks like. And you can see that many people have already posted pictures of urban saguaros. If you zoom in the map, you see that those areas that you thought they look like packed with saguaros, if you zoom in, the Phoenix metro area is huge. It's really enormous. So there's very few observations, particularly in the more urban landscapes, residential areas, industrial areas. We have a lack of observations. So we would like to focus our efforts on those areas, not so much on parks or preserves, but because we already know they are there. We already know we have many saguaros there, but we would like to know what's happening with the saguaros amongst the community in the city. Okay, so I already mentioned this. The city is an heat island. We can take advantage of this and study the saguaros that are living here, try to better understand how are they coping with this stress. With the results of the Saguaro Census, we are going to find, and we're going to overlap the Saguaro Census with a map of the areas in the city that get hotter temperatures in summer. And we are going to particularly ask these people to let us sample, let us study those plants. We're going to take samples of the plants. We're going to bring our measuring equipment. Perhaps we're going to leave some cameras and some equipment attached to your plant. But this is going to help us enormously to understand the fate of these plants under climate change. We might get there and put some paint on the tip of your plant, on the spines, and so we can monitor the growth rate. We would like to have plants where owners have a lot of information. That would be better if you know how old your plant is, and if you have had a regular irrigation over the years, or if you don't irrigate at all, that's even better, because we don't have to control for that. We don't have to get that information. So this is really a community science project where the community, together with the garden, we're going to help understand, and if there's a problem, detect the problem and cope with the problem and find a solution, right? So I'm going to end here, and I like to tell people to think about the idea that your yard is not only a pretty space, it's also a space where you can keep biodiversity. We can help the garden, the botanic places as a botanical garden, to keep and preserve biodiversity, particularly local biodiversity. So we see often exotic plants in yards. It would be great if you can help us preserve and care for natural plants, particularly the ones that are under more danger, and make your yard an extension of the botanical garden. All right, I finish here, and I'm happy to take any question.
Thank you so much, Tania. We have a question in the chat, and I can answer this one. Would you prefer captive or non-captive? So we want urban saguaros, so we don't want saguaros that are in parks or preserves. We really want saguaros that are in front of libraries, industrial areas, in front of homes. We want urban saguaros. captive versus non-captive can get tricky. Most saguaros in the city are transplanted. Some, which we may not know, might have been there all this time. But if you see, where they are planted, definitely mark it as cultivated, but, we'll take both as long as it's in urban areas and not in natural areas. Next question is, did you say you prefer ones with no irrigation?
Yeah, so it's not that we prefer, it's easier for us because if we get irrigated plants, well, it's going to be hard because most of them are in the city, right? So we cannot control how much people irrigate the plants. Each person irrigates differently. So if there's plants with no irrigation, we would like to study them because we don't have to deal with the irrigation.
I have a couple of photos to share, Tania.
Okay, let me stop share.
So we have questions, and this is really interesting. So here's one. This is the far away picture. And then I'll share the other one right here, which is a little bit closer up. Can you see that okay?
Yes, this is strange. So you see, so when you go see saguaros in the wild, you don't see these kind of strange things that you see in the city. And I think it is because the plants in the city are so stressed that their immune system cannot cope with many things that in the wild they can. So for example, this, it looks to me like an infection, like a fungal infection, or perhaps insect infection. So it seems that, but this is a speculation really, but it seems like a bird got there, started a hole, the plant couldn't heal well and fast enough that hole, and started like this proliferation of an infection.
Tania, is there any way this could be, we have like I don't know if they're cliff swallows, but swallows that build nests under the bridges. Could this be a bird trying to pack soil around that opening?
But it doesn't look like soil to me. I don't know, perhaps.
Linda, can you unmute and tell us if that's what the soil looks like around there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I noticed this was at a business on Pima Road, and I counted at least 5 saguaros that were in this condition where they, right above the hole, they had that black matter, and I couldn't tell, even when I got up close, I wasn't sure what it was, but I think I posted at least 3 of them. I just didn't finish adding my observations, but there were at least 5 where it had the black markings above the holes.
Wow, but you see, this is amazing because if you show us this in the census, we can go visit that spot because the exact location of this spot is recorded in the app. So we go, we visit the spot, we can take samples, and we can assemble a series of pictures showing saguaro diseases, and we can request aid from experts to solve it.
Okay. Yeah, I have a few more that I need to add on the iNaturalist, but I have taken pictures of at least 5 that were nearby each other that had this.
Wow. So Jenny, do you think that might be birds?
I don't know. I'd be really interested to put like a game camera up and see what's come into that hole. Because I can see in this one, there's what looks like kind of nesting material, and there's leaves right here. So I don't know.
That's true.
I don't know why they would, but I'd be really curious to see. Linda, if you have time to sit there and watch, I'd be really interested. But yeah, that's really wild. I mean, never ever seen that before. Let's see, I'll check the chat for some more questions. I have a saguaro in a pot on my patio. Are you interested in that one?
Of course, if you know how old it is, it's very helpful to us. Like, of course, it's hard to know because you get the plant and it's probably already 2 or 3 years old. But if you have an idea, that is going to be extremely helpful, because we don't fully understand the growth rate of cacti, and particularly on saguaros. It seems to be highly dependent on the conditions the plant is growing. So you can have two plants, same age, but very different in size, same age. It depends if the plant, the type of soil, the irrigation, things like that.
Next question is, how about saguaros in urban parks like Piestewa Peak or smaller neighborhood parks? I'll take that one. Those are more natural areas, even though they're urban parks, they haven't really been disturbed. So when it comes to urban parks, I would say something more like Los Olivos or, like small neighborhood pocket parks in like Coronado or, that kind of thing. We're looking at things that are not in natural. So if it's like more undisturbed desert, quote unquote undisturbed, like natural areas, we really don't want that. But if, yes, it's, a neighborhood park, yeah, we are interested in those.
Yes, I was going to say neighborhood parks are important because, I'm talking about these parks that you have a playground and you have, so these smaller parks that you have a lot of grassy areas. But surprisingly, there's no saguaros in those parks. And it would be nice to talk to people in the Parks and Recreation. They can help us propagate saguaros and keep a small area of the park and put some more saguaros in our parks.
Next question is, should we count the small budding arms on the census? So the arms that are just starting, the little baby new ones.
Well, I think the question says how many arms, right? How many arms they have. You know what? I would say it's up to each one's criteria. If you think the bud is large enough, so just you would count it as an arm, say it is an arm. I would say that.
Next question is, do you only want us to photograph saguaro in our yards, or can we include those we pass along the streets? Yes, absolutely. Anywhere and everywhere in your neighborhoods, like I said, library, if you're, going to work and there's one in front of your workplace, commercial buildings, all of that. Yes.
Yeah, it is very surprising that. So since the census started and we started thinking about the census, everywhere I drive, and I don't know if it happened to you, Jenny, or all the others, but you start looking around, opening more your eyes to see if there's saguaros. For example, my daughter goes to ballet class in an area around the airport, and you would think there's no saguaros there. It's really ugly, but they are some. I could see some of them. They are holding on. They are surviving there. So open your eyes everywhere you are. Any saguaro you see, it will be helpful. Even if you cannot get close enough, just take a bad picture. It's okay. That would be helpful.
Next question is, also, I've seen some that have arms that have grown low towards the bottom. This is normal, or is that not normal?
Yeah, we saw that and we had discussed that. So if you go to the description of the species, Carnegie gigantes, if you go to the description where biologists and taxonomists decide how this plant should look like, so the description says the arms needs to grow or pop out from the middle of the stem. So this, you have the main stem and the arms should grow from the middle upwards. But we have seen many plants that don't. This doesn't mean that there's no exceptions. In the wild, I have seen very few that branch from the bottom. I have seen that more often in the city, and I think it is because they caught the saguaro, or when they transplant, they put it in too deep. So the plant perhaps gets confused. I don't know. It might be something about the artificial transplanting of the saguaro to a new site.
So Tania, correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of like a stress response. So it can throw out like another arm and try to,
try to, like, I need to survive. Let's branch out.
Let's see. Still not clear on the difference between saguaro and Mexican cactus. So that's the cardon. I'm going to bring up my screen.
Yes.
So they
You
are, sorry, go ahead, Tania.
cardon are not common at all here. So 95% chance that you are looking at, 99% chance you are looking at a saguaro here. But there's some cardons. I just, here in my neighborhood, in the other street, one of my neighbors has a big cardon. I wonder how he got it.
Yeah, so we're actually seeing a pretty good number of observations come in that people have cardons in their yards. So the main thing that I can see, if you look at cardons, their structure is usually a little different. So they tend to typically, again, this between saguaro and cardon, as we just talked about, their arms can kind of grow lower, but cardons have lower arms and they're kind of multi-stemmed. Whereas saguaros typically want to have that one main stem and then arms that grow off. And then the appearance, when they get older, it's a little bit tougher to see. But if you look at like this one right here is a good example, those pleats, like those ridges look a little wigglier. I don't know how else to explain that, but they just kind of have that wavy appearance. And then I'm trying to find a good picture. So in the pleats, you can see this kind of V-shaped chevron pattern. And saguaro will have that too sometimes, but it's not as all over, especially with the young cardons. This one might be a good one. So you can can you see that kind of V shape in between there? And they're bluish in color, again, especially when they're younger. So you'll see that kind of bluish color and then this kind of pattern in between. And they supposedly have less ribs. Sometimes that's not.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. They
Sometimes
have
it's hard to
less ribs.
tell. Yeah.
In general, yes, you can see by the definition, again, by the definition of the species or the description of the species, cardon are much larger. So the stems are going to be bigger and they have less ribs and the spines are smaller.
So they also have different fruit that
Definitely.
ends up looking like this, and it tends to grow down the sides as well.
Mm-hmm.
Typically don't see that with saguaro except for last year when they got really wonky and stressed out and we saw them bloom down the side, which was very weird for saguaro. But yeah, cardon fruit looks like almost little fuzzy grenade type shapes. Very different. And then this picture right here, I think is the one. There's a flower. So the flowers, and of course, there we go. So a little bit different than saguaro.
Yeah, you can see here, this is a very good example. So you can see there's less ribs. Saguaros have more ribs. And you can see here barely any spine, while saguaros are really very spiny. And in saguaros, the flowers grow at the tip, in the apex of the stems. Whereas in cardon, they are, we call it subapical. So they are not right at the top, but they can be distributed almost at the top.
So I hope that helps. And especially when they get a little bigger, if you are at Desert Botanical Garden, when you walk by Webster, there's a very Instagrammable spot with the two old cardons. Yeah. Those are not saguaros, those are cardons. So.
Yeah, so the fruit is the most distinctive trait because saguaro is amongst the columnar cacti. Saguaro's fruit is very unique. So as you can see here, yeah, in cardon, yeah, there's like a very spiny fruit attached to the plant, and you can see here, whereas saguaros is very different. Most other columnar cacti have fruits similar to the one you see here, the cardon.
I was going to go here really quickly so we can kind of compare really quick. And this is all in iNaturalist for anybody that's curious. You can look up any species and see pictures. That'll help. So you can see a lot of crested saguaros in here.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of see the difference, right? They're this kind of shape typically. And we don't see, I'm trying to find a picture of fruit and flower. And there's a lot of fun observations on here. This one's interesting. But again, see, this is not typical for saguaro.
This is not
happened.
typical. This
Yeah.
might have happened when they were really stressed.
Mhm. But here's a picture of the flower. So you can see they look a little similar, but yeah. So
Yeah.
this is like that bud shape, but very different from cardones. Hope that helps. Let's see. Thank you. Like my earrings. Appreciate
I like
it.
them too.
A friend in Joshua Tree makes them. There are many saguaros at the entrances to Chandler Mall. They are at the southwest, northwest, and north entrances in groups of 9 to 11. Any suggestions on how to take photos? They're so close together like a fortress, it's difficult to photograph individuals. So 2 things that you can do. You can take a photo of the group and try to crop on individual saguaros. That's an option. iNaturalist doesn't like to see repeating photos. It will flag those sometimes as duplicate observations, even though you're saying, you know, there's multiple saguaro here. If you can just get as close, and then you can try to take individual pictures as close as you can. You're welcome to draw on your pictures and point arrows to which one you're referring to. Those are a couple of options. I know it can get kind of tricky, but we appreciate you making those individual observations. Saguaros are blooming right now. I don't think the cardones are. The ones in the garden have a couple, and they're more fruiting than flowering, but we do see a couple. Let's see. So how do we sign up to participate? I'll put a link in the chat in just a minute when we finish up, and you can join through that link. And yes, the recording will be posted, and we're going to send it to your email as well. Linda also said, I've been tricked several times by tall barrel cactus. Yes.
Yeah. But don't worry, because other people is gonna look at your observations and we can correct that.
Especially when they're a bit younger, it can feel really hard, especially as Tania and I were looking at one the other day and we're like, is that a saguaro or is that a barrel cactus? Without a close-up of the spines, it's hard to tell. So if you're not sure, try your best to get a close-up of the spines for saguaro or barrel cactus. Barrel cactus, again, typically have like a thicker kind of mid spine, and it tends to have that fish hook shape. And often, depending on which one, kind of pinkish in color too. It occurred to me that Tolleson area may not have many saguaros, as it was farmland at one time. That's a very good point. Camelback area as well, that was a lot of agriculture. So unless they were transplanted, yeah. And that's what we want to know. That's another thing we can look at through time, right? Is can we find pictures from, you know, before and compare it to now? And lots of interesting stuff that we can see with this project. Do you want recent plantings? Yes. Does anyone have a question that they want to ask verbally that might be a little easier to ask than typing in the chat? You're welcome to unmute and do that. Another question, are the barrel cactus stressed? We lost one last year and it just seemed to collapse.
Yes, we can assume that if saguaros are dying, all other cacti are suffering, and all other plants and all other living things.
It's been a tough couple of years.
Yeah, and plants, I always say, cacti take a long time to die. So it might happen that, I don't know, for example, with freezing, there might be frost for a couple of days and you think your saguaro is okay and is recovering, but no, it might die several years later.
I've put a link in the chat. The first link is to a page for the Saguaro Census. And on there, you'll find a tutorial video. And then there's a link where it says join the project here. Follow that link and you can join on iNaturalist. I've put a link to the EcoFlora website as well as Tania's page. And if you have questions, you can email me if you have iNaturalist tech questions. So I put my email in there. Does anybody have any other questions? I'll give you a minute to get those links copied down, and I will send those links in the email with the recording as well. So you'll have those available to you. And Tania, has
sorry.
also put her email in there.
Yes,
Tanya.
feel free to contact us if you have any question or any more interest in a project.
Or if you want us to sample your saguaro.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, okay, this is a good question. I receive many emails. To be honest, I receive hundreds of emails of people wanting to volunteer their saguaros. This is fantastic. But right now, I'm just the one dealing with those emails. So we decided, I'm talking to the IT department. We're figuring out the best way to answer everybody. Likely, we're gonna answer you and ask you to fill in a form with your address and some information about your plant and the exact location, like with georeference. And once we have that, we're gonna select the plants that we will study. Right now, this is a pilot study. We will select few plants, but we hope that next year we can go bigger and select more.
Any last minute questions? You got time for maybe, let's see. Do you prefer plants with lots of holes and scarring or healthy ones? Both.
All of them.
Thanks for your help going back out Friday morning. Yeah, thank you to everybody that's participated already and has put in observations. We, last I checked, combined with the volunteer project and the public project, have about 3,000 or more observations. So yeah, great stuff. So thank you everyone for attending today. If you have questions, you have our emails. And again, I'll be sending this out with the links and our email addresses so you can contact us if you think of any other questions. Tanya, is there anything else you want to say before we leave?
No, just thank you very much for all your help and your interest in this project. And yeah, we hopefully we can keep working together for our saguaros.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Show us your urban saguaros. We want to see them.
Mhm.
Take care.